A small-town church has made big-time news with its refusal to follow pandemic lockdown measures. It's the focus of a W5 report this weekend.
The definition of a police state, a totalitarian state controlled by a political police force.
The Church of God Restoration, with chapters in Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta, has defied public health orders holding parking lot and indoor services. And its leader, Pastor Henry Hildebrandt, has emerged as a hero in the anti-lockdown movement. But now some of his former members are speaking out. To talk more about her report, we're joined by W5 host and managing editor Avery Haynes. Avery, how did the Church of God Restoration become so embroiled in the anti-lockdown movement?
Well, initially, Henry Hildebrandt, the pastor there that you heard right off the top there, was protesting the fact that they weren't allowed to pray inside during the pandemic, hold services inside during the pandemic. But it has now sort of snowballed into a much larger message that he's making anti-government, anti-police, anti-health officials. And really, he has, as you mentioned, emerged as sort of this hero to the anti-lockdown crowd. He has been front and center at rallies, so-called freedom rallies, right across the province, as well as a massive one in this tiny community of 7,500 in Aylmer in southern Ontario, where thousands of people from across the province sort of descended back in November rather, and really it has created, and why we call the piece A Town Divided, it has created this huge division within a town.
Well, you spoke with two former members. What did they reveal about the control they had?
Right, so this is a pastor who is front and center talking about freedom this and freedom that, and what they say is he doesn't afford, and the church doesn't afford, much freedom for his own congregants. They describe this church as being a doomsday cult. They say that every single aspect of their life has been controlled by the church, from the color that they paint their houses, the kind of cars that they can drive. They're banned from going on the internet. Their marriages are chosen by the church. Their vacations have to be approved by the church, according to them. And we spoke to a former minister who grew up alongside Henry Hildebrandt in the church, who described some really horrifying doctrine that involves medicine, and that the message is that you need to pray your cancer away, and that it's God's will whether you live or you die. And also some real issues surrounding child corporal punishment, claims that children who are infants are subjected to punishment that is physical. And so, you know, what was fascinating for me, Nathan, is that this is a man who we've seen, sort of in news clips, to sit down in that very church that has created such division in this town, and to hear what he has to say in response to all of this. It was a fascinating interview, and a large section of that is going to be aired tomorrow night.
So how did the pastor respond to the allegations?
He's a very charismatic man. I mean, he really is a charismatic man with a bent to sort of capitalizing on what I think it's fair to say that all of us are frustrated. Everybody is frustrated with the lockdown and the extent of the pandemic measures that have gone on. But he's capitalized on sort of the extreme messaging in the anti-lockdown crowd, and they love him. They're lapping it up because this is giving them some respectability, right? This is a man of God who is on their side. But what they don't realize is that he sees what's happening right now as a prophecy about the apocalypse. Because in their doctrine, Nathan, they believe that in the final days before the end of the world, their church, the ranks will swell with new followers. So he sees all this attention that he's getting as a sign that the end is near.
All right. Thank you, Avery.
Thank you, Nathan.
And you can watch Avery's entire report, A Town Divided. That's Saturday night at 7 on CTV's W5.